And welcome everybody to episode 2 of the Conference USA podcast Roundtable. This is the second iteration of a show that received well over 1,800 views on all of our platforms last week. It was a absolutely wonderful show. We can't thank you all enough for the support. I'm Jake Gibson of the Pause Up podcast, and tonight we have another fun episode planned for you guys, talking a bit more about Conference USA football as it gets closer and closer and closer to week one. So, a lot to discuss. As a matter of fact, we have a brand new member of the Conference USA Roundtable to talk about as he just joined the show. They are the Miner Talk, covering the University of Texas El Paso Miners. We had a lot of UTEP fans talking about that UTEP representative, and we got him. So before we get things going here with our quarterback list that we'll all happily discuss, I'd like to welcome in and give some spotlight to Zay of Miner Talk. So Zay, welcome to the show. If you'd like to go over yourself and your host, the state of the podcast, as well as where people can follow you on socials to go over your work, go for it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for having me on. I love to talk Conference USA football, especially, it's nice that you guys made this whole thing up. There was nothing like this prior, 2-3 years ago. So it's great. And Miner Talk, we talk after every UTEP game, basketball and football. Fans can call in and we put it on, as a podcast after the fact. So yeah, thanks for having us on. I'm UTEP Zay. The show is hosted by Adrian Broadus. I'm just a co-host, but yeah, thanks for having me on.
All righty, thank you, Zay. And fellas, I promise we do have a Kennesaw representative in the Owl Chat podcast. We're gonna get him on one of these days, but it's busy over there, I imagine, Kennesaw, Georgia. So we'll hold off. Maybe they'll hop on for episode 3. But yeah, welcome to episode 2 of the Conference USA podcast Roundtable. So let's not waste any time here. Some of us are in more hurries than others, but we do have another list that was posted on social media that we all sort of combined for results with. Last week, it was just overall general power rankings of each team in Conference USA. But now we're going to be diving into the nitty-gritty, if you will, talking about each position and how they define their teams. And this week, we're going to be starting off with the quarterbacks of Conference USA. So let me pull up the tweet that was posted by the Owl Chat podcast so that everyone can see what we will be talking about. Let me get everything good here. And here we go. Posted by the Owl Chat podcast back on July the 5th. It is the official top 5 quarterbacks in Conference USA. Similar to last week, all of us sent in our different top 5s, and they were all combined and averaged out into what you see in front of you here. So just to quickly go over what you're looking at. At the 5, it is none other than Logan Smothers of Jacksonville State University. At number 4, it's Kewan Jenkins of FIU. At number 3, it's Nick Vadiato from Middle Tennessee. At number 2, it is TJ Finley from Western Kentucky. And at number 1, I think there's no shocker here, it is Caden Salter from the Liberty Flames. So we've all combined different ratings, and this is what it averaged out to. So this is where it's going to get interesting here as we all go into some of the differing opinions that we have. We had a list of who would like to share their ideas first. However, one of us is a little bit stretched for time right now, and that would be Benjamin from the March to the Pods. So we'll actually start off with Sam Houston, whose quarterback did not make the top 5, but still, if you'd like to talk about your overall thoughts on the top 5, as well as where you think that your quarterback at Sam Houston should rank at, now would be the time.
Yeah, thanks for letting me go first. Have a move this week and a hurricane coming tomorrow, and so this is the time to finish packing. So, yeah, thanks for letting me go first. So I'll get into my rankings. Obviously, Caden Salter pretty clearly number one. At number two, I had TJ Finley. Had a chance to see him a lot at Texas State last year, really impressed by him. And I think that's kind of what we all have too with him at number two. I had Logan Smothers at three. I really liked what I saw from him last year. And in the Rich Rod offense, I think it fits his game really well. Don't know if he's the third best quarterback, but I think he's going to put up probably the third best performance just because of that Jacksonville State offense and what it can do. I did have Keon Jenkins at four, so I'm lined up there. And then I have the Sam Houston quarterback, whoever that is, at number five. And so that's going to be either Jace Bauer or Hunter Watson, most likely. This spring, it was split between those two and Grant Gunnell. Grant Gunnell going into his second year at Sam Houston. He's made a bunch of different stops, but it looks like it's going to be Jace Bauer, who was the Central Michigan starter last year, or Hunter Watson, who was the starter for Iowa Western last year, the JUCO team that won a national title. And so Hunter Watson's a real wild card. Not a lot of people know about him, but I think he was the most impressive quarterback during the spring, the handful of practices I was at. Just really impressive, and it's a guy that's a winner, went undefeated last year, won the JUCO national title. So look for Bauer or Watson. Similar games between the two. Both use their legs really well. Can pass it around. Both have great size. And so that's my rankings. I go Salter, Finley, Smothers, Jenkins, and then Bauer or Watson at Sam Houston. So that's what I've got.
Awesome. So at this point forward, we have a specific order that we have going here, starting off with the quarterbacks that did not make the top five. And, of course, they're CUSA podcast representatives. Oh, and he dipped. So he is a busy man, like he promised. So thanks so much from the March to the Pod for quickly hopping in and giving some love to Sam Houston. But let's move on to the rest of the list. So we wanted to ask the Owl Chat podcast first about their QB situation, but much to the love of the 700 Pelham Road podcast, Kennesaw State once again has not made it to this episode of the pod, so we're going to have to bypass them. And next up is going to be Evan from the Go Tech Please Don't Die podcast, talking about what your top five looked like and do you agree, disagree, and talk a bit about the quarterback situation with the Bulldogs and what you see happening.
All right, yeah. Thanks for having me again, guys. I'm excited to talk and hear what y'all have to say about your quarterback situations. My vote was pretty similar, I think, to most people's. I had Caden Salter first, obviously. I think that was unanimous. I had Vadiato second, which I guess is higher than most had him. But basically just liked what I saw from him last year. Finley coming in as a transfer. I don't know as much about him. I don't watch Texas State. As a rule, I try to avoid the Sun Belt as much as possible. So I don't know a lot about him, but from what I read in preparing to do this, I liked what I saw statistically, obviously. Had Jenkins fourth and from FIU. And, you know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Jake, but y'all settled on him as the starter after our game at some point where you had 4 passing yards in week 0.
Yeah, week 0 against Louisiana Tech, our former quarterback, Grayson James, threw for a whopping 4 passing yards in 60 minutes of work. And so from that point onwards, from week 1 onwards, Jenkins was named the starter for every single game for the Panthers.
Yeah, I was very surprised when I started seeing 300-yard passing performance from FIU. What's going on there? Because Tech's defense wasn't very good last year. So pass defense was okay. But fifth, I put Jack Turner from La Tech. I was the only person to throw a dog a bone, if you will. But I think he's got a long way to go. But honestly, I didn't see anything from the rest of the conference that I could have put anybody there at fifth from what I was seeing. To me, there's kind of a clear top 4 of people who have proven something at the D1 level, and you know, obviously the one being Caden Salter at a different level, but you know, 2, 3, 4 having actually done something to inspire confidence. So, like I said, number 5, I put my guy at Tech because he's the most I'm the most familiar with him, but that may not be a good thing. So he's our clear number one heading into the fall. Probably not the best thing if you're a Tech fan, just because last year we had the Hank Bachmeier experiment. He transferred out to Wake Forest after kind of losing his starting job for some reason. We don't really know why. He was hurt a little bit, but then like the practice reports were saying that he was ready to come back, but Cumbie wasn't putting him back in, and going with the walk-on, former walk-on Jack Turner to kind of Cumbie was a walk-on himself at Texas Tech in 2004, led them to a really good season, a bowl win, all that stuff. So he's got a soft spot, but overall, Jack Turner played in 7 games last year, threw just 7 touchdowns with 5 interceptions. Just over 1,000 yards total passing. So again, not exactly inspiring a lot of confidence in me moving into this season. We did get a transfer in Ty Keys, who was spent his freshman year at Southern Miss, and then transferred to East Mississippi Community College, where they won the JC National Championship game last year. He was named an All-American. He's kind of more of a dual threat guy, which is exciting for us, knowing that our offensive line is going to be Swiss cheese. So we might need somebody who can run. But as far as spring ball went, he was kind of 4th string. He had not conquered the playbook yet in a way that would suggest that he might be ready early in the season, but he may get in later in the season. The other 2 guys are redshirt freshmen. Not really much to say about them. Evan Bullock and Blake Baker. They're not ready yet. That's about all there is to say about them. So it's kind of Jack Turner right now. In the Cumbie era, we've had, I think, no fewer than 2 or 3 guys start a game for us at quarterback. So some of these other guys will become a factor, I'm sure. But until Ty Keys is ready, it's Jack Turner's offense.
All righty. Sounds good from Louisiana Tech. We move on towards our New Mexico State pod, so take it away. Oh yeah, that's right. We still don't have a New Mexico State pod in the Roundtable. Hopefully someday we'll get that going. But for now, to confirm that we New Mexico State is part of Conference USA, their quarterback situation. There was no Aggie that made the top 5 as far as power rankings. So, womp womp. We move on now to the University of Texas, El Paso. So we'll hand the mic to Zay, and Zay again just missed the list of top 5 quarterbacks in this power ranking system that we have. In your opinion, what would you say is the top 5 situation for Conference USA, and what does the QB situation at UTEP look like right now?
Yeah, makes sense that they missed the top 5. I don't want to diss on my UTEP guys, but it was a rough season last year. You go through 3 different quarterbacks. It was tough. I think the top 2, it's probably unanimous, like you guys said. Salter and Finley, I think should be 1 and 2. I really like Finley. Saw him at Texas State last year. He's a fun player to watch. He's a big guy, and he has an arm on him. So I think he is the clear-cut number 2. Salter easily number 1, but after that, it really is interchangeable. It really is interchangeable. I think a lot of different people are going to have a lot of different, quarterbacks from 3 to 5. For me, I'm going to put Jenkins at 3. I really like his game. Obviously he did struggle last year against UTEP, so that was one of the only times I did get to see him, but I like his game. He was a young guy. He was a freshman last year. He's kind of, I'm not going to say thrown into the fire, but, he's a freshman. You don't see a lot of true freshmen, playing games like that. And he looks like a gamer. I think he has the highest potential out of everyone besides 1 and 2. So that's why I have him at 3. Number 4 was tough. I put Vadiato because, experience, I guess. I didn't get to see a lot of Middle Tennessee games, but, the one game that I did watch was, when they torched UTEP. So that was kind of the main reason I put him at 4. Number 5 was really tough. I ended up going Smothers just because he has that, he was a Power 5 guy, and I see a lot of potential out of him. So, that'd be my list. when it comes to UTEP, I had, McConnell at 6 because that's who I think is going to win the job for the Miners. He, he came in. He was a 4-string guy last year, and he just took control of the team. He took over the team in a nice way, led them to a couple of wins, and he has the team under his belt right now. And I think that's the big thing coming into the Scotty Walden era. So I put McConnell at 6 because I think that he could have a nice year. He could have a nice year if he learns the playbook well, if he kind of adapts to things here. And not much else. I think the QB battle for UTEP is going to be interesting down the stretch. I want to say it's a 2-man race, but who knows at this point? Who knows? They've kept it well under wraps.
What was going through your head the moment the UTEP players ran and posed in front of the blue Lamborghini on that fateful night in Miami?
Yeah, I was going crazy. We were in the studio. Cade McConnell, he comes onto the show a lot, so it was kind of cool to see him starting the game and just to see them dominate and do the whole celebration in front of the Lambo. I was going crazy in the studio. I was going crazy. It was one of the only highs of this season, so had to take it in.
Still can't believe it. That game happened the way it happened, but I digress. Now we have Sam Houston on our Vice Night this upcoming season, so hopefully they can finally get a W in the pink and blue. So now we get into the pods that have a top 5 quarterback on this list, starting off with Jacksonville State, who has Logan Smothers listed right there at number 5. So Caleb, from one quarterback talking about another. Oh wait, no, wrong. Caleb Williams. I apologize, but still, I know you have that knowledge about Smothers. So please take it away and talk a bit about. Do you agree with the placement, and how do you see Smothers going along this season?
I'm actually going to start at the top so I can finish with Logan. I think everyone in this group chat had Caden Salter at 1. If you didn't, you probably don't watch football. I think honestly, it's at the point where if you're a quarterback coached by Jamie Chadwell, you're probably going to be top 5 in the country in passer efficiency. That's just how it is at this point. Grayson McCall did it for 3 straight years at Coastal. Caden just did it at Liberty. That's just how it goes. I had TJ at 2. I had the pleasure of seeing him at Auburn, and I knew he had potential then, but like all good things, Brian Harsin found a way to ruin it. And of course, he went to Texas State with GJ Keene and played in the spread and shred and just turned into a monster. So he, in the Helton air raid, he should be a monster again this year. I went Vadiato at 3. He actually had a really good game against us last season. It was more just how our front 7 played that won that game. And then I put Keegan Shoemaker at 4 before realizing that they had Grant Cannell transferring in. Otherwise, that's probably who I would have put at 4. So we can disregard my 4th place vote. But finally, yeah. So I put Logan at 5. Part of it's just thinking he's going to develop. Maybe part of it also is seeing the way the offense moved with him versus Zion Webb. Logan's by far the better passer of the 2. So when Zion graduated, now he just kind of has to step up. But there's some guys behind him. We have Zion Turner, who just transferred from UConn, has some really good tape. Ashton Fry is a 6'4" freshman, redshirt freshman, really good player. Mm-hmm. We have Tayshawn Smoot, who had some academic problems throughout the season that kept him from playing. Otherwise, he actually might have gotten some run in the Liberty game when it seemed like everyone was getting hurt left and right. But I went Logan at 5, and part of it, again, Zay touched on it. He's a Nebraska guy. He played Power 4, now football, and actually competed pretty well at Nebraska throughout competitions and was going to be the backup before Rich Rod offered him a chance to compete for the starting job here. And also, Rich Rod, he coaches quarterbacks. That's his position. Mm-hmm. Every quarterback he coaches in some way or another puts up good numbers, whether it's in the run or the pass. They're going to do one or the other really well. So I think this year we're going to finally have a guy who maybe does both really well. And yeah, so that's my ranking.
My co-host on the Pause Up podcast, Kevin Barral, asked, no chance you guys see Jacksonville State run a 2-quarterback system with Zion Turner, who I think fits that offense perfectly, and Smothers, who played well, who played well last season.
I personally am of the opinion that if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't have any quarterbacks. And the reason I say that is because we all saw us run a 2 QB system last year, and we won 9 games and won a bowl game and had a really nice season. But also, I think we only had 2 games where a QB went over 200 passing yards. I think we averaged about 190 a game. So I'd like to see us just stick with 1. But if it's going to be one of those 2 guys, I'm fine with either or. Zion Turner, by far, probably the best runner on the team. He was clocked at about a 4.45 at UConn, so he can run zone read. But I still think it's going to be Smothers, me personally.
Unrelated, Vandy Chris 24 says, sorry about Vandy taking the entire New Mexico State roster and coaching staff away from them. LOL. I'm not complaining. If you were to ask a New Mexico State pod, which we don't have, then I'm sure they'd be pissed off about that. But it is what it is. So shout out Vanderbilt, I guess, who made who makes an appearance on the show. So next up on the list is myself and our quarterback, Keywan Jenkins. They call him Lights because he is lights out.
Lights out! Lights out!
The funniest part about that clip is that I don't even think Lights Jenkins was even mentioned. Like that was just a no context clip there. But Jenkins makes the overall top 5 list at number 4. And I think it's awesome that a lot of you guys feel so very highly about Jenkins. Going back to last year, like Evan had mentioned, after Grayson threw for 4 passing yards in week 0, which, by the way, he's no longer on the Panthers. He has since transferred to Boston College. He's still a very nice player, super nice guy. We had him on the podcast prior to last season, so we wish him the best of luck over there in the ACC. But we also spoke with Mike McIntyre not that long ago, the head coach of FIU football, about the decision to put Jenkins as the starter. I really don't like that Boston Celtics shirt, Caleb, but I digress. Sorry. We had spoken to him about the decision to make Jenkins the starter from week 1 onward. And it was difficult at times because obviously he was thrusted onto the spotlight, like you had mentioned, but what is that a cat, Caleb? Is that the mascot of the 700 Pelham Road podcast? I think it is. Not the only cat in the Conference USA, I see. I'm getting sidetracked. What I want to briefly say is that he was brought into the spotlight early on. However, if you were to ask any Panthers fan prior to the season beginning, they wanted to see Jenkins more than any other quarterback start the season because he is a Miami product from Miami Central High, won a bunch of awards there. He was the hometown kid that everyone wanted to root for and were excited to see commit to FIU. Jenkins last year showed a lot of potential, especially in the non-conference stretch against opponents like North Texas and UConn, where he had some of his best games of the season. Granted, there were some games against the tougher opponents in Conference USA, like Jacksonville State and Liberty, where he struggled with, as most of the conference did against those teams. However, I definitely feel that Jenkins has a lot to prove this season. However, I feel like what gets me really excited about him is that what we have seen from him so far in the practices, he's bulked up, and even more than that, he's now going to be taking leadership of this team. He wants to fill into that leadership role as the guaranteed starter of the Panthers this season onward. It feels good as an FIU fan to talk about the Panthers and not have to really worry about who's going to be starting the season at the quarterback position. It's been a while that I've had full confidence in our starter, but I do think Jenkins will have a great season. However, I actually have him 5th on my personal list of quarterbacks in the conference, and a big reason for that is because while I do think he can adapt and sort of fill in the pieces of where he struggled at last year. Sometimes pocket presence was an issue for him. Sometimes getting the ball off before the defense got to him what was a problem. There's still a lot of questions about FIU's offense in general, as far as their offensive line, whether they've improved or not from last season. The offensive line was not great for the Panthers last year, and not a whole lot of changes have been made to it. Not to mention, obviously, Jenkins lost his biggest weapon last year, which was wide receiver Chris Mitchell. He has since transferred to Notre Dame, so now it's going to be a matter of who is Jenkins going to be throwing the ball to this season, which obviously is undecided. They have brought in some nice transfers and some nice signees, but we will see. I do think the quarterback's best friend is a run game, and I do think FIU's run game has been improved this offseason with the return of Lexington Joseph alongside some of the bright stars that we have in that position that we saw last year. So I forget who had mentioned here that Jenkins might have the most potential out of any quarterback listed. I believe it was Yuze who had mentioned that, but I do agree with that. If everything goes right for the offense, if there's no key injuries like there were at points last season, and Jenkins again fully assumes that leadership role, is I really do think that he can shine this season. And Kevin commented something to know with Jenkins is how well the offensive playbook has been changed to his strength. Offensive coordinator David Yost watched all of the Miami Central tape, and bulking up certainly helps with that. Now, moving on to the rest of the list, I have Vadiato at the 4 spot. Again, kind of a weird situation for him where the team around him has really changed quite a bit, but I still think the pure talent of Vadiato can still lift the offense at Middle Tennessee. I have Finley at the 3 spot, and the thing with Finley, Smothers, who I have at the 2 spot, and Salter at the 1, is that their rosters are still extremely talented. Not to mention they have some solid defenses that help the quarterbacks and the offenses. It was rare last season that Jenkins and FIU's offense started off near the 40 or 50-yard line or came off a turnover. It didn't happen that much for FIU, but it did for these teams, and that's why I think the quarterbacks, combined with experience and with solid defenses to boot, they will be again some of the cream of the crop of Conference USA. So I have Finley at the 3, Smothers at the 2, and of course Caden Salter at the 1 spot. And I will say, I still kind of wish they beat Oregon in the New Year's Six. It just would have been so funny to have seen Oregon go down like that. But I digress. It didn't happen the way we wanted it to. Maybe. I don't know how many of you guys actually wanted to see Liberty win that or not. But let's move on now to Middle Tennessee, who in the combined rankings, Vadiato is listed at the 3 spots. So Jake, how do you see this going? Do you agree with the placement, and how do you see Vadiato going this season?
Yeah, I actually had Vadiato in a similar spot in my rankings. To go through mine, and much like everyone else, Caden Salter, number 1. I think that's a no-brainer. When you have almost 4,000 yards of offense, both passing and rushing, he's a clear-cut 1, over 40 touchdowns on a year. Impressive guy altogether. TJ Finley, contrary to what most thought, I put him number 2 ahead of my own Blue Raider. But I think Steven, as he gets his opportunity, he'll agree. Like he's a physical specimen, and he's obviously Coach Helton, OC Will Friend, is going to be inheriting quite the athlete. He's got an arm, and he was middle of the pack when you look at him in the Sun Belt Conference. But I think we'd all agree that the Sun Belt was a better quarterbacking conference than the Conference USA was last season. So for him, I'll be excited to see what he's able to do. If he could he might even out throw everyone in the conference this year based on his numbers from last year. So exciting stuff from him. Vadiato, a lot of experience coming from him. I mean, a lot of people forget that he was a bowl MVP at the Bahama Bowl back in 2021. That's how long he's still been playing for us amid some injuries. And I'll break down his game a little bit more as I finish the rankings. For Keon Jenkins, for every reason you said, Jake, there's so much potential with him. I think if FIU gets all their marbles in a line for him on the offensive side, I think he'll just take off. Him being the youngest guy on the rankings, there's a lot to be excited about for him and down there in Miami. Much like Ben from March to the Pod said, the 5 spot really is kind of a toss-up because you have a bunch of teams in this conference that haven't quite figured out what they're going to do. Other than maybe Jack State, I think Logan Smothers is going to be the obvious one, but I actually went with Cade McConnell from UTEP, one of the few that actually had him down. and mostly just so I can get that bug off my back. UTEP Zay there throwing shade at me for not giving UTEP any sort of love. And in the last episode, I did the same there. I doubt UTEP, but I do like Cade McConnell for a few reasons. Mostly for the passing numbers of anyone that's left in the conference. He had the highest numbers at 1,400 yards last season, 54% completion percentage. And then my second reason for choosing him is a really backwards way of looking at it. I think the Scotty Walden era there is going to take off with flying colors from the quarterback position. Mike DeLillo from his senior quarterback at Austin Peay this last year. Big, long story here, but DeLillo is actually a transfer from MTSU. So when Walden was able to take him from, he started a few games here at MTSU, didn't see the playing time he wanted, went to Austin Peay. Coach Walden took him all the way to third team All-American. Threw up Austin Peay record-setting numbers there his senior season. So I know that Walden has the potential to coach up quarterbacks. I think Cade McConnell has the tools. So that's why I threw him there at the 5 spot. If I had to have an honorable mention, I put in Hunter Watson, the JUCO national champion there at Sam Houston State. Hearing Ben talk about how they're still at a toss-up with him and Jace Bauer kind of is a reason why I didn't put him in the 5 spot. I think there's potential with Hunter Watson. I mean, winning big games at any level is a big deal. 2,000-yard passer there at Iowa Western. So exciting stuff about what he could potentially do. And to fall back on last week's conversation, I don't know how some people are so high on Sam Houston, myself included, when they don't have the quarterback situated quite yet. I think that's a hard thing to really pin down and say the team is going to finish top 5 in the conference. So I do believe that if anything, and hopefully Ben could attest to this at some point in the future as we preview the season, you know, what is Sam Houston going to do about that? So, but if they get that down and Hunter Watson is who he was at JUCO, I think Sam Houston State's in good hands. But to go back on my conversation with MTSU, I think Vadiato rightfully is a top 3 team, or top 3 quarterback in Conference USA for a lot of reasons, given the experience. Embarrassingly enough, he was the second highest rusher on our team last year, but he's just a gamer. That's kind of who he is. The one thing that's going to, if anything, is going to bring his game down this upcoming season is going to be the offensive line. We have to replace 4 of our 5 starters from last year. Well, the only returner is the right guard, who was a Conference USA all-freshman selection, so that's promising. But 4 of your 5 starters on the offensive line, hopefully your quarterback isn't running for his life all 12 games, which could potentially happen and why his numbers may not be there. But I'm excited about what Vadiato brings. He has the ability to throw for 3,000 yards once again for the 3rd straight year, so a lot to be excited about him. I know that there was a question in the chat from Vandy Chris talking about Derek Mason, and I'm sure, will Derek Mason be able to handle the QB at MTSU? That is a position he didn't have a lot of success with at Vanderbilt. And then he just said head coach will bring him down too. I don't necessarily disagree with Vandy Chris. I think one thing, if you go back, and I'm ashamed to know this much about Vanderbilt football, just by virtue of living so close, but one thing about Derek Mason's history with the quarterback at Vanderbilt was his first year he dealt with 4 quarterback concussions. He wasn't able to necessarily figure out the quarterback position his opening year. Not that anyone's going to pin that on him. And then once you go to, is it Kyle Shermer, who takes over in 2015, and he was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school, kind of a big deal for Vanderbilt, but he just never really came to fruition until that 2018 season, where he's got the likes of Lipscomb, and he's got I'm blanking on the name, Pinckney, another NFL prospect who got drafted. So once he finally got all the tools in place, Shermer took off, and then we see that once he leaves, things fall back to ground. So I don't know where Mason falls in that. He's also a defensive coach, so I don't know that I necessarily put that on him to develop quarterbacks. That'll be more Bodie Reeder's job at the OC position. He's done a pretty good job in his career as offensive coordinator. So I don't know if Mason's going to be the reason he's successful or not successful, but I don't necessarily put his history on his back. I think he's just been a poor luck, but also you could even say he's been a poor recruiter because he leaned on Kyle Shermer, which no one knows who that is, and he was an SEC quarterback for 4 years, so that's a real problem. But I know I'm playing wishy-washy on it, but it'll be interesting to see what he does with Vadiato. I think his experience and Bodie Reeder at OC could take his game to the next level. So we'll see what the quarterback situation holds for us, but things look promising for MTSU.
Well said there, Jake. Well said. This comment here says, loving the collaboration, gents. Got to run. We'll catch the rest on replay. Steven, you demand # go tops. Okay. And then just to round up, Capitals for Life just says Phantom with a fire emoji. So, all righty then. Let's move on to the second spot. in the combined quarterback rankings, which belongs to TJ Finley of Western Kentucky. So now we bring on Stephen from Topper Talk to talk a bit about the high praise given to the quarterback of Western Kentucky. Do you agree with the 2 spot, and how do you see Finley's season going?
Well, I do agree with the 2 spot just off the top, and I think this may be the first time in the 100-year plus rivalry with myself or with WKU and MTSU that I agree with what Jake said. Our rankings 1 through 5 are the same. My reasons for having Cade McConnell at 5 are nearly identical. I have a lot of faith in Scotty Walden and what he can do with that offense as far as turning it around from the get-go. I think Caden Salter being 1, I mean, he's an electric player. He's a special athlete. Even though it felt like coming into last year, he wasn't the surefire QB1. Just reading preview magazines coming into last year, trying to learn more about Liberty, who's going to be their guy. And he just really jumped onto the stage and really proved that he's a really good quarterback. He obviously has a really good team around him. I'm excited for TJ Finley. I mean, I think it's safe to say that no matter who WKU starts, that we have the tallest and biggest quarterback room possibly in the nation. I mean, we have Caden Velkamp that's 6'6", 240. TJ Finley 6'7", 280. Both of those guys have, differing resumes. Caden Velkamp is a local kid from here in Bowling Green. Really jumped onto the stage and the spotlight last year when he led us to that remarkable 28-0 bowl comeback victory last year. Everybody thinks that maybe he should just have earned the spot off of one game, which, if the season was continuing last year, if that was just a middle of the season game, then maybe that would be the case if Austin Reed was injured. But when you have an off season, you have roster turnover and you have portal additions, etc., and you bring in somebody with the talent, the arm talent and leg talent of a TJ Finley, who has P5 experience at LSU and Auburn, threw for over 3,400 yards last year, 24 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 67% completion percentage. And then you put him in the Tyson Helton offense with all the wide receiver weapons that he's going to have around him. And you could just name all the guys coming back, Keyshawn Johnson that we've added to the roster, and then Mike Matheson that's coming back from injury. That was an All-CUSA selection last year that didn't play a snap. So I think, and I didn't rank it this way, but I would not be surprised to see Finley's production be number 1 in the conference by the end of the year. Not saying he'll lead us to more victories, but just production-wise from the quarterback position, I really think Finley's that good. And hopefully that translates to victories, but we'll see. Nicholas Vadiato at 3 with MTSU. I mean, he is an electric player. It always seems like Middle has a really tough, scrappy, mobile quarterback. The last 5, 6, 7 years, going back to Brent Stockstill, they just always have had a warrior back there. And he's a really good prospect, a really exciting player. He's not going to lay down and lose any football game. So I'm going to be really interested to see what Derek Mason does with that team and that offense. I also had Jenkins at FIU at the 4 spot. I just think there's a lot of potential there with him. I think it's really going to boil down to what that team has around him, if they can protect him and just allow him to have the opportunity to make plays and hopefully win games. And then Cade McConnell from UTEP, I had him at 5. I was kind of flipping a coin with who that 5 spot was going to be. But, for all the reasons that we said earlier, including Scotty Walden, just being able to turn around an offense and, exactly what he said with DeLillo at Austin Peay last year, who threw for, I think, 3,200 yards last year. So he's going to get the chance to sling the ball a lot. As long as they have some playmakers around him and can protect him a little bit, he's going to have some really good production. So, I think this top 5 list is solid. It is interesting that, Finley was by far the number 2 when it's not official. Tyson Helton is not going to name that starter until probably the last week of fall camp. That might be a week before the Alabama game. But I think it's safe to say that Finley will be our guy. And I definitely agree with him being at 2, before he's ever played a snap at Western.
All righty then. So that leaves only one more spot to talk about in this top 5 list, combined top 5 list. And it's been the sort of de facto number 1 choice for just about, I believe everyone here that Caden Salter, who helped take Liberty to a New Year's Six Bowl last year, is going to be number 1 in the power rankings. So, Ben, I think it's pretty obvious whether or not you agree with Salter being the number 1 or not. But obviously, there's a lot of changes that happened to this Liberty team and a lot of high expectations for them now that they had an undefeated regular season conference championship and a New Year's Six position last year. So how do you see Salter improving if he does in 2024?
Listen, so I mean, this is only our second pod, all right. So we've only been doing, and I appreciate you guys coming, but I'm going to lean into the heel this year, okay? You know, we're the jokers, so we're supposed to be the villain, all that good stuff. Listen, we're saving the best for last, right? So y'all get used to that this year because I'll be speaking last a lot this year. Anyways, so moving on. So let's go from the bottom because I'll save again the best for last. So I had at number 5, Cade McConnell, which I kind of did a toss up between him and Logan Smothers. I mean, I really hope the best for Logan Smothers because I would like to see Jack State doing great again this year. It's good for the conference. But I do think that Cade McConnell, with his experience in the games that I watched with him, he's got a lot of potential. Number 4, Keywan Jenkins, excuse me. My goodness, dude, he's the future of the conference. I pray for the state of the conference that he stays an FIU Panther for his all 4 years. And the only reason why I say that is because we had a little bit of a scare earlier this year with our quarterback. So, and then I put number 3. So this is where things get interesting. Guess who I have at number 3? And it's not Vadiato. It's TJ Finley. Because I don't know if he's the quarterback or not. Steven just said. But also, I hate to say it, he also, his last game of Sun Belt, he lost to Arkansas State. To freaking Arkansas State.
Okay.
I'm hoping that, you know, Western Kentucky puts on a better front than losing to Arkansas State and letting Arkansas State drop 77 on them. So that maybe he's on a better team now. So maybe he'll have a better performance in games like that. So that's what I'm hoping. But I just trust Vadiato. He's the only quarterback on this list that wasn't Bo Nix, that actually showed up to play against Liberty last year and had a consistent game. I was at that game. It was a weeknight game, and it opened up my eyes. And that man should have beat Missouri. He should have beat Missouri. They were this close. I remember watching that game, and I was on the edge of my seat. Come on, guys, let's do it. Come on. And so close. And they were a surprise last year. So Nick Vadiato, I think, really has a big deal. All right, we'll save the best for last. So let's dive a little bit into this Liberty room. Yeah, y'all might have the best and biggest, like the biggest room, Western Kentucky, but we still have the best quarterback room. So we got a guy sitting behind our man, Caden Salter, who I'm not even that huge of a fan of when it comes to his consistency all last year. Here's why. Because he had relied a lot on the run. My expectations for him he's got to make a big jump. And everybody's like, oh, stats. As someone who's a big quarterback critic and who, you know, just loves studying that part of the game, he had a lot of moments where he was carried by our run game. Because here's the thing, guys. Y'all got to stop the run game before you even worry about Caden Salter. Because we're the number 1 rush offense. Yeah. And we got our entire running back room returning, and our offensive line, we're only missing a couple key guys. And to be honest, even the guy that we lost to Vandy, have fun with Chase Mitchell, because we got a replacement, a former almost 4-star from Texas Tech coming in, who was a beast and who was rotating in and out with Chase Mitchell all year. So we're not losing really anybody on our offensive line more than outside of a Gadlin. Gadlin was phenomenal and Graham was solid. But this line, they're going to give Caden Salter plenty of time. And we got another guy sitting back there who will, again, thanks App State for giving us you guys future quarterback. They're the deniers that will say, well, we have Joey Aguilar now. Yeah, who's going to replace him? Okay, in a year. But yeah, we got Salter, and then we'll have Berger, and then we'll kick your butt on September 28th. So,
man.
I'm excited about this year. Don't get me wrong. I still don't think we're going to have a great of a year as last year. I think this whole idea that we're already like a playoff contender and all that stuff, and Flames fans will come at me. We got a lot of work to do. We have a whole wide receiver room that's going to have to be refocused and remodeled. But the problem is those receivers should be wide open because you got to stop the run first, and that's why CJ Daniels had a lot of production last year, is because they focus and they would load the box. I mean, heck, you guys saw at Western Kentucky, and I think even Middle Tennessee, there was a couple times where they were basically wide open, because you load up the box and there's CJ Daniels wide open. So we don't have that favor into us now where we have a great guy who is not only going to be wide open, but will also catch the ball. We got a couple of receivers that we need to, we'll get to that later. We got some guys coming in. So that's where I'm worried about with Salter, is he doesn't have Daniels to rely on anymore. And that's the thing. He needs to hone in some, like, there were some balls, man, that he threw last year that if he was on, it could have been worse. It could have been a worse year I think he only threw for 70 yards against UTEP or something like that, because we didn't have to throw the ball. So the point is there's been times where he hasn't had to use his arm. So that's where I'm like, man, we got to pump the brakes, because I think at the end of the day, we can go on and on about how I'm the heel and stuff, and we're going to run over the CUSA, picking on you guys a little bit. At the end of the day, I think all these teams have elevated and have gotten better. And I think Liberty has been good for the conference, because now you got teams that are like, well, shoot, we got to stop Liberty. So, and we're going to get everybody's best. It's no longer, well, Liberty's had a good couple of years. They beat some Arkansas or BYU's or Syracuse, and then they come into this conference and we win some games. Well, now we're going to get everybody's best from the start of the year. So I think we need to pump the brakes a little bit on the big gap. But yes, there is a gap there between 1 and 2.
Wow, that was something else, Ben. Where's that game against App State being played?
At App State.
Oh, okay.
At App State, dude. It's gonna be rough, man. I'm still up in the air whether I'm gonna go down or not, because I'm only 3.5 hours away. Like I said last podcast, I've been down there. Those are some weird mountain folk down there. There's some oddballs. They love Luke Combs, drinking beer and granola and all sorts of stuff, and they're mountaineers. It's a beautiful campus, and it's going to be right in the late fall. I mean, not late fall, but early fall, when it starts late September. So I probably need to just take the ticket. Shout out to Zach Green. He's got supposedly one reserved for me, so we'll see what happens.
Awesome. Alrighty then. So just like that, we've done it. We have done it. We've gone over the combined Conference USA podcast roundtable QB rankings. So once again, the combined list is Logan Smothers at the 5, Kewan Jenkins at the 4, Vadiato at the 3, TJ Finley at the 2, and Caden Salter at the number 1. Now that we've all given our reasonings, I'll now make it an open forum. If anyone has anything they'd like to add about the state of quarterbacks on their team, or just Conference USA in general, maybe compared to the Sun Belt, which we all seem to dislike, then now would be the time. So whoever wants to go first, take your best shot.
I'll jump in. I want to talk about Liberty for a second, because he was being very coy about his Salter and his backup. But don't you all have another, like a 4-star that is on campus now and will be ready hopefully in a couple of years? So you're being coy, but man, it seems like y'all are set up and stacked for the future at the quarterback position, especially.
Hey, and listen, I love Jaden, but he ain't proven me to anything yet either. It's funny because both Berger and Bradford, they played against each other in high school. Berger would have been a senior and Bradford would have been a sophomore. And then he transferred to IMG for his junior year. And listen, and again, this is not me trying to downplay him or anything, but I always think you think of a Kellen Mond, for example, who played at IMG. You're playing with a bunch of 5-stars and 4-stars. I mean, yeah, you're up in your level you get to have college level practices and such. but you're just shredding teams. Like they played against freaking Lipscomb Christian Academy or whatever, who was another top team last year, and they shredded them in Nashville. Like, and it's just, I don't know, man. I don't get too hype about all that. He got some recruiting, but he has a lot of work to do. He's a lot like Caden. I'm not going to lie, but mind you, again, before this whole thing last year, everybody was really hype about Caden because he was Tennessee and all that stuff, but we were still having a quarterback battle. There was still a little bit of something there, and we weren't sure about him. So, yeah. So Bradford, yeah, he's going to be great too, but we don't know. Again, I'm more of I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm a hometown guy. I'd rather just you stay at home, ball out when you're home. That's the same thing if you're in college too. Stay where you are, like the G5 guys say. Like stay where you are, ball out. No harm done to CJ and some of these other guys that have moved on to the bigger squads. But so I'm excited regardless. I'm happy Caden stayed. I thought he was going to TCU, but
Well said there about staying where you're from, especially in the college level. I saw this graphic from Western Kentucky talking about their recruiting in Florida, and I had to do a double take. I was like, wait a minute, what the hell did I just see? Is that big red overlapping the state of Florida? So that was scary to see. So I wanted to ask Zay, because we ended the show last week talking about this. It was about the general sort of excitement levels about our teams heading into this football season. And we went one by one talking about it. Looking at the schedule for the Miners in week 1, it's not going to be an easy task for them as they're taking on the Cornhuskers over in Nebraska. But regardless, just talk a bit about the overall excitement of the UTEP fan base, which I have surprisingly learned a lot about. Because of the podcast Roundtable and the giant UTEP crowd that has revealed themselves. But talk a bit about how you and the rest of the UTEP crowd is feeling about the start of the season.
Yeah, well, a lot of fans are really excited, and they might be a little too excited. I don't want to get everybody's hopes up. Being a UTEP fan, you're used to a lot of losing. The bar lowers, so. A lot of these fans are excited. They're expecting a lot of big things, which, who knows what will happen. If Scotty Walden can win 6 games in year 1, I mean, I've said this before, they're going to build him a statue. They're going to build him a statue if he wins 6 games in year 1. And, if that happens. So fans are excited. Fans have, some expectations. Obviously, starting against Nebraska week 1, it's not going to be an easy thing. And, he's going to get some haters if UTEP loses by a big amount. But, no one's expecting them to win week 1. They want them to take care of business, against Southern Utah. Who knows? What if we slip up? They slip up against Southern Utah. Who knows, right? But a lot of UTEP fans excited, ready for this new era.
Well said there. All right. As we approach the 8 o'clock mark Eastern, if anyone has any final thoughts about anything we've talked about today, or maybe some jabs at Ben from Fan the Flames, who at this point kind of deserves it. I ain't gonna lie. If anyone has anything they'd like to share before we sign off here. No take.
I'm excited to see what happens when Jamie Chadwell leaves.
Okay, well, fair point. I'll just say
be
that
said to Rich.
He's like 62. He's going to retire soon.
I know, right?
I'll just say that. All right, first things first, just to break the ice here. First things first, what the hell is everyone going to be doing day 1 when NCAA a 25 drops in like a matter of like a week or a couple weeks?
I will sadly be getting ready for my baby sister's wedding, so y'all will not be hearing.
Oh, I guess we really won't be hearing. Oh, okay. I'm going to be out of town, unfortunately. I'm going to be over in Orlando the same day that it drops. So, but once I get back home and get my Xbox up and running, taking FIU to the Natty. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll be sitting right here, taking the day off work, ready to put in some work on the game, ready to make my quarterbacks look better than they are. How about that?
Listen, no disrespect to any of the players that are going to be in the game, but I honestly, I'm looking forward to when I have my fictional player leading and starting his whole career as well. So who knows what name he'll be? It's probably some guy from like New Jersey who, is like 6'2", has like 99 speed and like 79 accuracy, and he's a freshman walking out to play against Penn State or something like that, and Mo Bamba's on, and I have to call a timeout. So that's what I'm looking forward to. No offense to Caden and all the guys. Love those guys. But I'm more looking forward to getting to the fictional players. I like building my own world. So,
Right.
But hey, I had a 10-year high school reunion, and hopefully they don't hear this. I'm not skipping out because of the game. I just don't feel like driving 8 hours home. I'd rather go to my sister's wedding in September and take the extra days then. So I was like, man, at least I get that Tuesday because I pre-ordered all the way up to like I would have to leave on that Thursday night to get there Friday and on. And because I'm from Buffalo originally, so go Bills. But anyways, it's man. Ever since I was like, man, I get the whole weekend. I'm gonna have all the boys over. We're gonna be, playing some couch co-op, fighting off with each other. It's gonna be fun, man. I can't wait.
Low key, something I want to do, and thankfully we have such a great relationship with FIU athletics that we might just be able to do it. Is to head over to our football stadium the day it drops, plug an Xbox somehow connected to the Jumbotron, and just blast some FIU and blast Dynasty mode at FIU over there at the cage. So I mean, we'll see what happens. But all right, everybody, thank you so much for watching episode 2 of the podcast Roundtable. Next episode will be defense oriented, so I've been told. So that'll be fun to talk about as we finally get to the other side of the ball. But to everyone from the other members of Conference USA who were able to join tonight, thank you very much. To all the fans who watched on either our X, YouTube, or even Instagram platforms, thank you very much. And until next time, again, just count down the days until A, EA Sports College Football drops, and B, when week 1 of the college football season will be upon us. So have a great rest of the night, everybody.